Hey there, welcome to the One Brain Four Wheels channel. In today's video, we're coming from the inside of the 1988 Fiero. And if you can't quite hear, the engine's a hell of a lot louder today than it was yesterday. I think I might have an exhaust leak, so let's go ahead and take it out on the road so you guys can kind of hear it. It's a lot louder, and at high revs, it's really whiny. So that's what leads me to believe I might have an exhaust leak. So let's go ahead and take a listen. So let's go ahead and get the old girl in the garage and take a closer look. So back in the garage we are, and as you guys could hear, it's quite loud. Definitely, it wasn't ever quiet before because, you know, it was canned before I bought it. But still, this is especially loud. So definitely, I think I'm going to go ahead and take a flashlight and kind of poke around, looking for any obvious kind of cracks or anything that would open up the exhaust system coming out of the engine, between the engine and the muffler, and see if I can see any cracks. You know, because, you know, they could crack, the manifold could crack just because of age, and, you know, that gets so hot all these years. You know, there's a number of parts on here that could fail and allow all that noise and exhaust to escape. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and peek around, and hopefully I can determine something easy. Otherwise, scary thoughts. Could be expensive. I hope not. But no, it really shouldn't be that big of a deal. Just really the hard part is finding it. So yeah, another problem with this Fiero. Definitely, Fieros are a great project car because they will never leave you without something to do to them. That's what I'm learning so far. So anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and poke around, get under the car, look a little deeper, see if I can see any cracks, and I'll get back to you guys. Okay, so we're actually going to go ahead and skip ahead in this video and get right to actually fixing the exhaust leak on the Fiero. But if you want to see my method for how I determined where the exhaust leak was coming from, because some of you guys may already know how to do that, some may need to know that information, go ahead and click on, I'm going to put a card right here for the video I made pretty recently on how I determined the exhaust leak simply using a vacuum and a little squirt bottle with soapy water. So let's go ahead and skip ahead to actually working on the Fiero. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead now and take off the exhaust manifold off the old Iron Duke here. And it looks like it's just got a few bolts. The only ones that might be a little tricky is getting these two bolts off of the kind of like flange connector that connects the exhaust manifold to the rest of the exhaust piping downstream. I might need to put the car up on jack stands and access it from the bottom, but it looks like the starter might be in the way. I don't know if you guys can see down there or not for this driver's side bolt for that. But other than that, it doesn't look too bad. So to take off the exhaust manifold here on the old Iron Duke on the 88 Fiero, it's actually pretty simple, at least so far. I went ahead and printed off this little diagram off of AutoZone. Their repair guides are pretty nice. They have lots of little photos and stuff like that. Little diagrams like this one. And it looks like our exhaust manifold only has 7 bolts holding it on. And then, of course, the 2 bolts holding on that, connecting it to the rest of the exhaust piping. Let's go ahead and start on these guys. So first thing I did, obviously, even before I did the testing for the leaks, I went ahead and took off the air cleaner. That was simple enough. And then I already looked at the bolts, and it looks like these 3 bolts coming off of the center outlet for the exhaust manifold takes a 15mm socket, like this guy right here. And then these outer 4 bolts for the exhaust manifold take a 18mm. So I'm going to go ahead and unbolt those now. And then once I do that, I think I am going to put the car on some jack stands and try to disconnect those last 2 bolts between the exhaust manifold and the rest of the exhaust piping. So let's snap to that and continue on. Also, might be a good idea to disconnect the oxygen sensor too, especially since I just replaced that when I bought this car. Yeah, just go ahead, and I'm just going to use a crescent wrench to go ahead and take this guy off, and then disconnect the little connector back up in here. I don't know if you guys can see it. There's a glare from the flashlight there. But there's this little easy disconnect connector for the O2 sensor. And then I think that should be everything in our way. When I read something about having to take out the dipstick holder, but I don't see why I would need to do that. So I will update you guys on that if I have to do that. All right, I'm ready to attack those two 15mm bolts that are connecting the flange between the exhaust manifold and the rest of the exhaust piping. I've got my jack stands here. My jack stand game is on point right now. I've got not one, not two jack stands, but also a third jack. It's not actually supporting anything, but just in case something slides, that might save my ass too. Why not have more than two jacks? But yeah, I have the two jack stands, the real ones, so I feel pretty good about it. Actually, this one looks like a slid a little bit. Maybe not. Well, it's fine, because I was already under there. But yes, let's go ahead and attack that now. Alright, so we're under the car. There's the rear of the car way back there, and here's the cat. If we come up here, you can see where my flashlight's shining. That's one of the bolts holding that flange. And if we slide, the camera angles and my voice are going to be really shitty under here because I'm kind of like almost kissing the camera right now at this point. But can you guys see? I don't have my glasses on, so I can't even focus on the screen. But you should be able to see right there the other bolt hole that was holding that together. I already unbolted it. But yeah, it's actually not as hard to get in here as I thought. The starter is out of the way enough. I didn't have to do anything, and you can actually see it actually slid down already because the bolts are missing. But let me go ahead and show you guys what it looks like with the socket wrench up there. So not really sure how well you guys can see with this lighting, but it'll have to do. So once again, there is the cat right here, out of focus right in front of the screen. And I've got my extension. It's almost too big of an extension, but I really couldn't make it any shorter without not being long enough. So if you've got different sized extensions, then that'll be great for you. But yeah, so that first bolt closer to the passenger side is actually really easy to get. Just kind of go straight up there where you see it. And then the other one, you kind of sneak it in. Oh my god, my arm's stuck. So you can see the wiring loom going to the starter. Kind of hug it with your socket wrench here. See, we're hugging. Sorry, I don't have enough hands. And if you just kind of slide it up there, you guys can't see the actual bolt hole because I can't get my arm over there with the camera right now. So yeah, pretty much to sum it up, what I'm trying to get from this camera shot is that you can access both bolts without having to remove anything else, as long as you have an extension. But yeah, just one more shot for good measure of the two bolt holes now that I can actually hold the camera nicely without having to hold the socket wrench. Right there where the flashlight's kind of focusing, that you really can't see it still, there was a bolt hole there, and there's a bolt hole there, and yeah, very easily accessible. Everything actually is just perfectly out of the way, which, you know, doesn't always happen. Alrighty, so many moons later, we are back in business, and we have ourselves a nice box of goodies here. Let's go ahead and walk our way through this and see what we've got. Alrighty, behind box number one, we've got a new exhaust manifold. So I actually went ahead and went with a new old stock GM original exhaust manifold for the 4-cylinder Fiero. Why I did this was actually just because it's really just a good, simple design from the factory. So I decided, you know, I'm not even going to go and like get something off of eBay or some other design. This is going to be just fine. So we're going to go ahead and go with that. And you can see it looks just like the original we had in there. Next up, we've got our new gasket, which looks just like that one over there. So new gasket. Here we've got the spring bolt kit. That is for the bolts and springs that go at this end and connect to the rest of the exhaust system. When I pulled that one out, I didn't even have any of those springs in there because someone had messed with this exhaust system in the past. So I will have that now. There they are. And then lastly, let's see, I've got some copper anti-seize lubricant for the bolts that hold the exhaust manifold into the engine block. And I believe that's it. Oh, and silly me, also, you're going to need this gasket right here. It's a circular gasket that kind of like comes in, like it nips in, so it's not perfectly circle, like the same diameter around the whole thing, or circumference. But that's actually going to fit in at the fitting where the end of the exhaust manifold goes into the rest of the exhaust system. Over into down here. I don't know if you guys, there's no lighting, but in there, it sits in there, and it's at that connection between the exhaust manifold and the rest of the downpipe. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and clean up this heat shield a little bit before I put it back into the engine because it looks like shit and it's all disgusting. But I just wanted to show you guys kind of the order that everything's gonna go in. So imagine my arm over here is the engine. We're gonna go ahead and reinstall the heat shield first in this orientation, and then you'll realize, I just actually realized it right now, but the very tippy top, can you guys see it actually says gasket this side? I was actually thinking about that as I was kind of ordering all this stuff. It's like, oh, what side do I put it on? Didn't even realize that when I took it out. But yeah, one more review. So engine, heat shield, gasket, manifold, which is over there right now. So we're going to go ahead and reinstall everything, get back into the car, do all the bolts and everything. And when I get back, hopefully this project is completed and we can go ahead and see how it sounds now. Okay, so since it's kind of tight in the engine compartment to really show you guys how to do all this, I wanted to go ahead and kind of just demonstrate outside of the engine how all this is going to be set up. So I've got my exhaust manifold over here, and you guys can see that this is the spring setup for how to kind of clamp it into the rest of the exhaust piping. So you've got this big wide flat spread here, the smooth spread. That's going to go between this part here, and then there's a piece that looks just like this coming off of the rest of the exhaust system, and those two pieces kind of are clamping everything together. And then in between, what you've got is this spring here, and based on the repair manual guide for this engine, it says that the spring should be like this. So you have the fat part at the top, skinny part at the bottom. And then lastly, we've got that gasket I was talking about, and you'll see, if I rotate this a little bit, this part has a part that kind of sticks out, and then there's a cup on the other corresponding end with the rest of the exhaust system, so it will sit just like that, cupping it into place, and this will all get bolted in and sealed up. So let's go ahead and do that now. Alrighty, so just kidding. So I actually was intending to use these spring bolt, kind of this set from Felpro. Don't use this because actually this flat sleeve on there does not run through the bolts on the bottom, the bottommost, that clampy part on the exhaust system. Let me go ahead and kind of bring you guys over here. So yeah, this part right here that has the bolts in it, right there, it does not fit through there. However, my dad was forethinking this problem for me, and he actually got me a different one. This one is a Dorman. There's the part number right there. And this one, you can see it still has a sleeve, but it fits through that bottom one perfectly. So now it can slide through, the spring can actually function, and we can actually bolt this all together. The other one, the threads fit, but yeah, like I said, that sleeve didn't, so the spring wouldn't actually do anything, so you could just put a bolt in there, because that just wouldn't be reaching that point because even the fat part that rides on wouldn't go through. So we're going to go ahead and try this part, and now I'm going to try to put it all back together. And don't forget to use your anti-seize because it's going to suck if you ever have to pull this out someday and you break a bolt in your engine block. So don't forget to use this on those engine block bolts for the exhaust manifold. Alright, so I have everything put all back together, the air cleaner, everything, the batteries, everything's reconnected. This should be ready to go. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Let's go ahead and start it up, and hopefully it sounds normal, I guess. Maybe a little quieter than it used to be, because it was kind of like raspy sounding, but not like in a good way. I didn't really like it that much. So yeah, let's just go ahead and see how it sounds. Alright, she sounds pretty good, so I'm going over to the garage though because I'm about to get gassed out right here and I don't want to die. But yeah, I'm very happy with the way this turned out. So one thing I realized after I had the car running for a little bit was that you can actually see some smoke coming out of parts of the exhaust system, different areas that I worked on. But what I realized is it wasn't exhaust leaks from the repair, but actually after reading online just really quickly, I found out that the anti-seize will actually smoke a little bit as the oils in it burn off. So if you guys do see it, like everywhere that I had applied it around the bolts, it was coming out, but it wasn't initially when you started the car. It was only after it got hot. So that's how I knew it wasn't an exhaust leak. But yeah, so definitely that was something I wasn't expecting, and at first I was a little worried, but it turned out to be nothing. So that's just something to kind of be aware of. Apparently there's different anti-seize lubricants that you can use specifically for exhaust, so maybe it won't do that. I didn't use that, and this will be fine anyways, but just so if you see that, don't be concerned or, really shocked that you see smoke. So yeah, if you watch the entirety of this video, then you now know how to change out the exhaust manifold on an inline 4 Pontiac Fiero. The 2.5 liter Iron Duke. Actually, this probably is applicable to some other, I think like the S10 Blazers or some of the small trucks and other kind of little shitty cars that GM was producing in the late 70s and in the 80s. This might be applicable too because they also have the Iron Duke. But yeah, it wasn't that difficult. The cost of the parts really was not that much. I think the new exhaust manifold was, I think it was a little over $100 on eBay. But that's because it was new old stock. Honestly, you could totally just buy something like a reproduction from AutoZone. I think they've got for $80 or something. Not that big of a deal. And then, yeah, just doing all the work myself. This is a really easy engine to work on. There's a good amount of space inside the engine compartment. Everything is just really simple because back before the time with a whole bunch of crap in there, it's got some computerized systems, but it's still, there's just not a lot of wires and things in the way like you would find in today's vehicle. But anyhow, I think that's all I really need to cover about this. I hope you guys learned something from watching this video if you needed to figure out how to do this. And if you didn't, well, you probably learned something, but if you didn't need to learn, but you just wanted a little refresher, and I hope this helped then. If it did, please give it a big thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, guys, let's hope that the Fiero stops breaking on me. Yeah. See you guys next time.